Friends, today we secure our Spring MVC application using Spring Security. And before we start coding, the main concept I emphasize in all my Spring Security videos is that behind Spring Security is filters. Filter concept is what actually Spring Security uses to secure your application. And of course, if you are new to the Java servlet filters, I suggest you to read this information a little bit just to understand the concept which sits behind Spring Security. And of course, we're here just to code, and let me open my previous project. As far as you remember, we built a simple MVC application using Thymeleaf and Spring MVC. And here's our application. It has home page, it has books page, which returns books. After user enters login, it shows more books than just incognito user. And this time we just secure this application with Spring Security. Okay, first of all, we need dependency for Spring Security. Let me find it. Here's our dependency for Spring Security. It's Spring Boot Starter Security. And for Thymeleaf, I want to show you one feature which Thymeleaf can provide to you for security. And I add this Thymeleaf Extras Spring Security 6. And that's actually it. We don't need any other dependencies. Let's get back to our code. Using Spring Security, you don't need to think about a bunch of configuration classes or a bunch of code to provide to secure your application. The main class you need is actually security configuration, where you specify which URL you want to secure, which URL you want to leave unauthenticated, and which page will be responsible for login, etc. And let's create this class. Let's create our package and call it config. In the config package, let's create Java class and call it security config. To mark this class as configuration, just put configuration annotation, and to enable security, just add enable web security. And that's it. This class is responsible for Spring web security configuration. And what we need to define? We need to define security filter chain. Security filter chain bin is responsible for deciding which URL to secure and which URL is not. Okay, let me create my bin. And security filter chain, we will have HTTP security. And I gonna configure it. Let me return HTTP build. And we're gonna customize our security, and it throws exception. How we gonna customize this security? We're gonna say HTTP authorize HTTP request, and here's our request. And what we're gonna authorize? We're gonna authorize all requests besides request matchers, and I want to leave absolute path. I want to leave styles, and that's it. I want to leave them unauthorized. Okay, permit all, but any other request I want authenticated. Using these two lines of code, I told my Spring Security to authorize any request, but leave this slash and styles and any URL after styles as permit all, just to be able to navigate to main page and to be able to describe styles. If I reload my application, I will see that all my pages are authenticated. If you check your logs of your application, you will see default security filter chain will secure any request with, and you will see a bunch of filters which Spring Security will apply to secure your application. And if you reload application, you will see access is denied. Access is denied means that we can't just show these pages without authentication. As you can see, we still are able to check our main page, and we still are able to see our styles, but that's it. All other endpoints are secured. Okay, and what we're gonna say next, we say that we want to log in. We want form login, and using this form login, I specify details for my form login page. I specify a URL which will be responsible for my login, and I specify, for example, default success URL. I can specify some stuff like if this login will be permitted or something like that. For example, permit all, because I want everyone to be able to navigate to my login page. And after that, I can specify also logout, and logout is logout permit all. Just user will be able to log out from the security. And before we proceed further, we need to specify controller for my login page, and we also need to specify a login page to be able to navigate user to the login and to authenticate him. And let's just create in the templates a new page and call it login page. And this is my login page, which will be responsible for logging the user into the system. It will have form with input username, and another input password. And actually, I want to use this login page to authenticate user. I also want to use Spring to allow him to do the hard job for me. What I mean by hard job, I mean I want to delegate all the process for user authentication to the Spring. For that, Spring has a tight configuration with Thymeleaf, and if I create my form and say Thymeleaf action login, Spring will proceed with login instead of me. Let me copy my Thymeleaf from my home page, and instead of simple action, I will use th action, and I will specify login. As you can see, IntelliJ IDEA shows me that Spring Security is responsible for this login. That's because this login functionality already exists in Spring Security, and if you specify it correct in your code, I mean this URL, this name as username and this name as password, it will work for you, and you don't need to provide any additional code, and method is post. And let's add a link to the main page. And let's get back to the controller and create a new controller and call it user controller. And mark this class as controller. And for get mapping for my login, I will return my login page. And that's how I will receive my login page when I navigate to the login. And that's actually not all, because I also need some object to store my user. Let's get back to the model and let's create user model. In this tutorial, I will provide only few fields to this user model, but you can provide as many fields as you want. Private string username and private string password, and I also provide a string role. And this user model I'm gonna store in the service in array list. And I show you this approach, and you can use this approach to store this user in the database or in other secure place. In this tutorial, we focus only on Spring security, and I will store user in the array list in the Java memory, okay? And for this, I create user service. I mark this class as service. And I need to provide some methods for user. First of all, let me create my array list. Array list with my user. And what I want to provide, I want to provide two methods, register and find by login. As you can guess, register is responsible for register user. And for this purposes, we're gonna just add our user to the users. And of course, we want to provide find by login. String login. And of course, we don't have database to search by login, but we can stream through these users and find by login. Let's do this. Users, filter, user, get username equals login, and if present or else just return null, for example. We can throw some exception, but in our case we just return null if user not found. Okay, and we have created our user service, which will be responsible for our users. In this user service, you can provide user repo, for example, and store user in the database. But in this tutorial, we will store user only in Java memory in array list. Okay, let's get back to our code and create additional methods for register. First of all, let's create a new page. Registration page. For this purpose, we will use standard Spring MVC practice, which we find out in the previous tutorial. It's just form. We need Thymeleaf for that. And form, you'll have input name, username, And action, we will use th action and registration, something like that, and method post. And let's create some functionality to return this registration form in the user controller. In the get mapping, we just registration get something like that. And to be able to register user, we will use an approach like we used in the books when we put empty book to the as attribute and then pre-filled it with fields. Let me add model, add attribute, user, new user model, something like that. And then we will use this user on the registration page, th object. All these details, how to implement this, you can check in the previous tutorial. And input type submit, value, register user, or just register, something like that. And then after submitting this form, we will be able to receive user in our post mapping, registration, and we need our service. And in user service, we just call register, something like that, and return. And let's say after I register my user, I want to redirect user to this login page to allow him enter his new credentials and proceed with authentication. And how can I notify login that successful registration is successful? I can put in the request params some sort of flag which will indicate that registration is successful. Let me put something like that, success. And on the login page, I can use Thymeleaf to get request param from the URL, and in case this request param is present, just show some message. Okay, let me show you how to do this. I use th if, and I say that if param and success, sorry, I guess I need to copy paste it, and if this param success is present, what we want to show, let's say you please use your credentials to log in, something like that. And that's actually all about it. And let's get back to our Spring security configuration. And because, you know, I don't want to use this password for user in unencoded way, because it's unsecure to store password in the raw format it's very good practice to encode the user password, to store it in the database, for example, or like in our case, just in memory. And how can I encode this password? I can use Spring Security password encoder. This password encoder I just need to define as bin, and it will be present in my context. I don't need to worry about implementation of this encoder. I just need to use it. And for that, I need to specify bin and say password encoder. And there are a lot of implementations of password encoders in Spring Security. And you can also use your own custom encoders. But I will use standard bcrypt password encoder. Something like that. I repeat, you can use any password encoders you want. You can even don't use password encoders. It's up to you. But I strongly suggest you to use some password encoder just to be able to store secured password in your system. And in the user service, I say we need AutoWire password encoder. And before we save our user, we can encode his password in using password encoder. User set password, user password encoder, encode user get password. We get user password, encode it with password encoder, and set it back to the password. And then this password will be encoded, and this list of users will have encoded passwords for users, and that will be much secure. Okay, and what else do we need? We need to, let's check how it works. Let's restart our application, and you need also to allow this register page because it's secured for now. If you, for example, navigate to registration, you will see this redirect to the login because it's unsecure. And let's just allow this registration page. Let's get back. And in security config, we under permit all, we specify this registration. And you know what? Let me edit this home page. As far as you remember, in previous tutorial, we specified this form, so user could provide login and email, and then click on show books, and he could see the books. But as we use Spring Security, we don't need this form anymore. Let's just remove this, and let's provide some message, something like that. To proceed with books, please authorize. And we provide user two URLs, two links, login and registration. Something like that. And on registration, we also need to provide to the main page. And let's provide to the login. And let's restart our application and see how it works. Let's restart the page, and as you can see, we can see our new message, and we can use registration. As you can see, after we clicked, we see a registration page, and we can proceed to the login, registration, to the main page, etc. And after we provide, for example, some username and password and click register, we will jump to this register. As you can see, user model has password as encoded. I entered ABC, but this password was encoded by this password encoder. And as you can see, user added to my users with encoded password. It means that our registration works fine. And what we need to do, we just need to create mechanism to get this user from this user service and put it to the security. As usual, I want to create as less code as possible, so I want to delegate the most amount of work to the Sprint security. And for this, I need to provide some additional configurations. First of all, I need to create custom user details service, because Sprint security needs this service to load user by username. On practice, it will be much understandable. Let me create a custom user details service, and I will implement user details service. User details service comes from the Sprint framework, Sprint security core user details, and it has only one method: load user by username. And I can mark this class as service, for example, and I need all args constructor. I will use my user service to be able to get user by login and put it as this user details. As you can see, as load user by username returns user details, also from core Sprint security. And this user details Sprint uses to put to the Sprint context and to authorize the user. And what we need to do, we need to get user by username from our service and convert it from our user model to this user details. Okay, for that, let me connect my, I don't need required constructor. I will use injections through the field, because I'm going to use this custom user details service in my configuration. So I don't want to create all args constructor. A user service. I just call user service. Find by login. As you can see, I just messed up with username and login, but you can use, for example, the unified naming. If in the model you will create just login or something like that, you will use login everywhere. And let me get back to my custom user details, close everything. Here is my user, and if by login is null, it means it's not found. I just return null. And otherwise, I return my user details, user builder build, and return. Why do I use user? User is also from the Sprint security, and as you can see, user implements user details. So instead of using this user details, because it's interface, I will return my user, Spring Security user, which already implements user details, and it perfectly fits to this object. And this builder is really convenient to map from my user model to this user. And I specify username as by login get username, and password by login get password. And I also need to specify role, username role. As you can see, this roles accepts a bunch of string roles. In my case, user has only one role, but you could also specify a list of roles. It would be totally fine. And this is my custom user details. And now I need to say Spring to use this custom user details instead of predefined in the Spring. And for that, I need to get back to my security configuration and create my bin public user details. Return new custom user details. And I also need to specify to put this custom user details to the authentication manager bin authentication manager. And in authentication manager, I have HTTP security. And actually, I want to get my authentication manager from HTTP. Get shared object, authentication manager builder. Authentication manager builder, and I want to specify UserDetailsService as my this custom user details, okay, and password encoder as my password encoder bcrypt password encoder. And that's actually it. I return authentication manager builder build. That's how I provided my custom user details to the Spring. And of course, I need to throw exception to just make this code compilable. And that's mostly all configurations we need for our Spring Security. After I enter login and password, this authentication manager will use UserDetailsService and this password encoder. It will get my user by login, and then we'll put this user to the Spring context, Spring Security context, and this user will be used in the filters to check that I'm able to navigate to the secured pages. And that's mostly it. Let's try. You know what? We forgot to add a role to the user in the user service. Let's say we want to add set role as user to any user who uses register page. And let's restart our application and check how it works. And in this login, we need to get back to the main and register our user. Let's say I want to add ABC register, and we navigated to the login. As you can see, we don't see our message that we successfully registered. Let's check why. Let's get back to the main, CBD, register. As you can see, we have login success, but it was redirected to 302. And I guess I know why, because we need to allow also login in this permit all. Let's check. Let's get back to the main and registration, ABC, register. Yeah, as you can see now it's not redirected and we receive login success. You successfully registered. Please use your credentials to log in. And let's use them, ABC. Oh, I didn't add a button to login. Sorry for that. Let's get back to the login page and add our button. Input type submit. Okay, and let's restart our application. Get back to the main, registration, register, login. And as you can see, it seems fine. If we navigate to the books, we will see our books. And that's perfect because we authenticated and we can see the data, secured URLs using our user. And what else do we need to add? Let's say we specified some incorrect username and password. As you can see, after we specified incorrect username or password, we will see login and then a request param error. We can use this request param error just the same way we used success request param to describe some message to the user. And let's say if error is present, something like that. Let's restart and try once again. As you can see, login or password incorrect. Works perfect. Yeah. And we also need to specify, you know what, let me register. Let's specify a logout page because we also need to have opportunity to log out. And for that, let's say we want under the books, we want to provide a button for logout. And let me, you know what, let me get back to my code under books and add something like that. And under form, we need to specify th action logout. As you can see, it will also be served by Spring Security, so you don't need to provide any additional configurations for this logout. Let me restart and restart my application. Registration. As you can see, we have logout, and after we click logout, we navigate back to the login and we have this logout request param. And let me add some more messages for this. Let's say if param is logout, it means that you successfully log out from the system. something like that. And I just don't want to enter every time my registration. Let me get back to my user service, and I will predefine some user, some admin user, because right now I want to show you admin functionality and user functionality, how we can distinguish it. For that, I need to create my one user with admin. I don't want to register user every time I restart my application. I will use post construct. This post construct method will work every time after this bin will be created. I want to create one user. Set role as admin. Username as admin, and password as password encoder, encode ABC, something like that. And let's add my user to these users, and every time I will restart my application, my admin will be already there. Of course, it's insecure, it's not fine, but for our demo purposes, it's totally okay. And we could also create, for example, some enum to store this user role and admin role. Let me create this in this model. Something like that. And inside this user model, something like that. And in our user service, user and admin, that's much better. And once we have admin and user, we can put different views for my admin and user. But before we proceed, let me restart my application and show you this case that admin works. Builder login. Sorry, we need specify string, not enum. Let's get back to our browser. And here's our main page. If we proceed to books, we redirect it to login and we put admin ABC, and we can successfully log in. But as you can see, welcome to the book page doesn't show me any username as it was in previous tutorial, and we see only one book. As far as you remember, we have our book controller, and it decides in the get book page, it decides if user provided login, it shows all books, and if user is not provided, hasn't provided login, it shows only a small amount of books. And as we already have our Spring security, we don't need this HTTP session because we already have user in the session. Okay, and how can we, I want to show you how can we get user from the Spring security in our, for example, in our controller. We have authentication principal. Authentication principal annotation can get us user details. It's exactly the same user details we return from this user load user by username. So we can be sure that our user details get, for example, username, will have our username which we provided here by login get username. So instead of this long session and other stuff with attributes, we can provide username from the Spring security. So we don't need this. They don't need this. And we also don't need this. and this one. And username. And if you restart our application, you will see that admin ABC, welcome to the book page admin, and we will see every page. One thing about Thymeleaf and Spring Security: Thymeleaf has good integration with Spring Security, and if you use, for example, Thymeleaf action on form, like in this example, Thymeleaf will provide CSRF integration with Spring Security, and it's additional layer of security for your application. If you, for example, try to edit this book and click edit, you will receive forbidden, because as far as you remember, on this edit page, we use action as simple action, not Thymeleaf action. And if you don't want to change this action to Thymeleaf action, you need to disable CSRF. And to do this, you can go to Spring Security config, select CSRF, and disable it, something like that. But if you use Spring Thymeleaf, you can just use Thymeleaf action, and you don't need to disable CSRF, and you will have additional layer of security for your application. The only thing you need is just to change this action to Thymeleaf action, just something like that, Thymeleaf action. And let me get back to my login page to see the syntaxes for that. And after providing this Thymeleaf action, Thymeleaf will inject token, CSRF token, to the form behind the scenes, and you don't need to provide additional configuration logic for that, and your application will have additional layer of security. Let's get back to our login, and yes, add admin ABC, and let me edit. As you can see, everything works. I can edit my data, and now application doesn't fail with forbidden. And I can log out, for example, and as you can see, you've been logged out message is present on my login page. And what else I want to show you: how can we show different functionality to the users with different roles. First of all, you always have this authentication principal where you can get, for example, details get authorities. Authorities will return you role. Stream map. Just to show you how role is stored. And I will just system out this just to show you the example. Then I very like this GlobalMehodSecurity when you can add annotation to your method to specify which role can use the method. For example, in our case for now, let's get back to the main page and let's register a simple user. ABC. And if I try to delete, for example, I can successfully delete my books. Let's say I want to provide delete functionality only to the admin, not to the simple user. I can use this GlobalMehodSecurity. It's very simple to configure and it's very simple to use. And let me show you how to use this. I already provided you example in my previous tutorial for security for OS 2, but let me show you once again. For that, we navigate to security and we enable method security using this enable method security annotation. And then we just, for example, for this delete method, we provide pre-authorize and we say has role. And let's say we want only admins to be able to delete. Admin. And that's it. That's actually it. Only admin will be able to delete this book. Let me restart and I show you. And let's get back to our home page. Let's log in as admin. And here is my books. I can click delete and it works fine. I can log out. Let's register as simple user. Register. Login. And books. And once I try to delete, as you can see, it shows me forbidden. And I can go further. I can even hide this button for example, for the simple user and show it only to admin. For that, I need to use Thymeleaf. And by the way, I promised to show you this authority. As you can see, you always have authority in your authentication principle. So you can use it on your own, for example, just to delegate some functionality to admin or delegate some functionality to the user. Okay, let's get back to our book page. I want to hide this delete button for non-admin user. For that, I will use Thymeleaf security extras. I need to add this first as dependency to my page. As you can see, I have security from Thymeleaf extras Spring Security 6, and I can use, for example, something like that. Where's my button? I can use security, authorize, and I can provide has role, admin. I want to show this only to the admins. And you know what? I also don't like when I enter my login and password and I redirect it to the home page. I want user after entering login and password to redirect him to this books page. I can do that. Let me get back to the security and form login. I want to add this configuration. Default success URL books and use everywhere true. And let's restart. Okay, let me restart my page. As you can see, I enter admin and I can see this button. Everything is fine. Let me log out, get back to the main and register as user. Register. I enter my username and password. And as you can see, now I don't see my delete button and I can't even see it, not to say I can delete it. That's how using Spring Security and Thymeleaf you can provide the ultimate level of security for your web application. And using Spring MVC security, you can delegate a lot of work to the Spring. You can focus on your business logic and you can just program as less as possible using this Spring security functionality. You will provide, as you can see, we provided small amount of code just for our configuration. and we provided even smallest amount of the code for our custom user details. And of course, in real projects, you probably will use some relational databases or other stuff. So using this approach, it's very easy to get back to the database. In this user service, you will just provide database layer, and the methods will be the same, and you don't need to change security configuration logic, because all our layers are independent, they loosely coupled, and that's perfect, because our security doesn't know where our user is stored, and our user doesn't know anything about security. So you can just provide in this service some database or other storage and store this user in this secure way in some storage instead of this array list. And yeah, that's all I wanted to show you today. Thanks for watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and I see you in the next video. Goodbye.